sometimes I come across a book that I really want to keep with me and it has a deeper meaning. One of those books is my favorite, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I love philosophy and psychology, and this book's packed with that. There are just too many gems in here that I don't want to lose once I close the book and put it back on the shelf. So I'm going to walk you through how I take notes on fiction books today. This is something I get a lot of questions on. People want to know if you should do it, and if so, how. I have a very simple method that has helped me through the years, and I've evolved over time to make it better and better. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through my highlighting process. Also, what I do with these flags, because they really help with the sort of visual aspect of the notes. But then more importantly, I'm going to walk you through the journaling that I do to get those notes out of the book and into my own head. Now, historically, I've used journals like this. I'd go to Barnes & Noble and I'd buy a big fancy leather notebook. Or I would get one of these, something like a moleskin or something similar. The problem with that, you guys, is that these notebooks are big enough that they start to take on other aspects of my life as well. So I might have notes in here on Crime and Punishment, plus notes on another book that I'm reading, plus my grocery to-do list, plus the things I want to get done with my kids and so on. So that down the road, I kind of lose sight of what was in here, and it's really hard to keep track of that. Instead, what I do now is I've created these little custom notebooks that I love. They're like little field notes, right? So here's my one for Crime and Punishment. I'm going to walk you through why I have done this, how it works page by page, and I'm going to fill out my notes for Crime and Punishment. And I also have other notebooks as well that can be used for just random books. So, you know, this is one that I use for general notes on any fiction book, or nonfiction, sorry. And these are my general notes for nonfiction, or for fiction books. It's too early in the morning. At least the coffee's good. So I want to walk you through these notebooks today and how the process works. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Read Well podcast. My name is Eddy Hood, and today we're talking about taking notes on fictional works like Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. So I've read this book a few times now, and here's what I do. As I keep my highlighters with me at all times, I keep these in a reading kit that I use. It looks like this. It's a little gray bag. It has a door that opens up. Highlighters fall out of it. It's fantastic. Inside I've got thesauruses and dictionaries and everything else. But what's important is that each of these highlighters has a specific meaning. Now, I've done videos on this in the past about what they mean, but I haven't done it for fiction because they mean something different here. So let's go over that quickly. So in the fictional books, blue highlighters mean a major plot point. These are big areas of the book that I really want to pay attention to. Green is in support of that. It is a minor plot point, something that is sort of a development of it. The orange highlighter is a quote that I want to remember, and the pink highlighter is just beautiful writing. You know that writing that you get into that's just like atmospheric, and you just think, wow, that was really, really good. And then yellow is something that I might disagree with in the book. So all I do when I'm reading is I try to not interrupt the story. I don't want to stop and do too much thinking yet. I just want to capture parts that matter. So as I'm reading, I'll find a spot here. I don't know if you can see this, but in Crime and Punishment, right down in the center spine here, I put a mark. And this clearly is a sort of a minor plot point right here that's taking place in the book because it's green. And then what I do is I grab my pen and I put a little title here to summarize this. So I wrote self-punishment right there. So this passage is clearly a point where Raskolnikov is going through a moment of self-punishment. And then I keep reading. That's all I do. I color code the passage on the inside spine, and then in the outside margin, I give it a title that summarizes what it means. Okay, so now step 2 comes into play. I've done all of my highlighting. I've read the book. And if the book is really good and I think, you know what, I want to make some notes for this. It's not just enough to highlight it. I really want to make notes. The next step then is to pull out these little Post-it notes. And you'll notice that they are the same colors as my highlighters. So I'll open this up like so. Now what I'm going to do is after I've read the book, I'll go in a few days later to a week later, and I'll start back on page 1, and I'm going to just go page by page and look at each of the highlighted sections to find out which ones are really good. Typically when I read, I highlight a lot of stuff. I just think, wow, that's good, that's good, that's good, that's good. In the end though, maybe 20% of those are really worth keeping and thinking about. So that's what I'm doing right now is I'm looking for the best of the best. When I find one, what I'm going to do is take out the same color of flag and put it in the book so it sticks out the spine just a little bit. I don't want it sticking out a lot because then I've got these big flags that kind of hang out and it drives me crazy. I just barely want the color of it sticking out just a little bit. My desk is a mess, but that took me roughly 15 minutes, I think, to go through the entire book of Crime and Punishment. Over 500 pages, but it's easy again, right? Because I'm just looking for the areas that I highlighted with a marker, and then I'm finding the ones that are really important, and I'm flagging those so that the flags stick out. Now, I still have way too many highlights in here, but I've ended up only flagging about half of them. So here's what here's what I end up with, right? A book that has multiple colors sticking out of it. I like this for a few different reasons. One, it shows me where all of the most important ideas are in the book, so that if I ever want to pull it off the shelf, I can quickly see where the major plot points are, where the minor plot points are, the bits that I disagree with, the bits that are beautiful writing, and the quotes that I could put on my wall if I wanted to, right? So that is step 2, is to flag the book. Now, we need to go to our journal and start to think about those concepts. Now, in my notebooks that I create, there are 44 little boxes that I call book notes. So I really only have 44 quotes that I can analyze in a book, which is still quite a lot. But again, I like to highlight a lot of things. So I have to go through now and find even the best of the best and cut that down one by one. So I'll show you how to fill this out next. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go through the flagged passages now and find, again, the best of the best. Tiago Forte, the guy who's sort of the lead thinker on how to create a second brain, wrote an article that I'll link to in the notes down below on a concept called progressive summarization. And what he does is he goes through an article online, and he highlights everything that he finds interesting off of the whim, and then he sort of goes through several different steps to sort of cut that down until he has the best ideas that remain that he can think about and add to his second brain. This process is somewhat designed around that, where again, I highlight everything that I love, then I flag the best, and then I'm going to go through now and put the best of the best in my notebook. So let me just find one that I really like. I'm actually going to start with this first passage on page 1 because it's setting up the book, right? It's talking about Raskolnikov and his sort of circumstance with debt and his shame he feels because of his finances and sort of the weight he has. I think that's an important part of this background for him as a character. So what I do in my book is for each passage that I have highlighted in green down the spine, I've got the green flag sticking off the edge, and then I have a title on the end that helps me summarize what that passage is about. I've titled this, The Shame of Debt. So I'm going to transfer that title, The Shame of Debt, to my notebook. On the very top line right here, I will write The Shame of Debt. Okay, now because it was a green passage, I'm going to get my green highlighter out, and I have a little box in each of the note sections here that asks me to sort of flag the color. So this box is going to be colored in green because it's a green note. This tells me when I go through my notes again, if I flip back to my major or my legend here, the green is a minor plot point. So I'm going to come back here, and now I'm going to put what page number this is on. This is actually on page number 3. Okay, and then I've got several lines here where I can begin to write my response to this passage. I don't want to write out word for word what Fyodor Dostoevsky is writing in the book. My goal here is to write my thoughts and my experience as I think about the shame of debt. I'm trying to learn from it. So there's no point in writing down word for word what's happening in the book, because I can go to the book and read that, right? I can look in my notes. I could go to page 3 and I could read what Dostoevsky said about the shame of debt. This section, these notes are for my own personal thinking. So I'll do that now. Okay, so this is my first note. It's titled The Shame of Debt on page 3. It's a green passage here, meaning it's a minor plot point. And I just wrote, I've noticed that money, or the lack of it, changes people. We must take care of our basic needs if we are to be civil. Raskolnikov lives in poverty, which he uses to justify his actions. So that's something that is it's actually important to me. I've had sort of people in my life pass away who had a little bit of money, and as that money sort of gets distributed to the children, I've seen that money change people, some positively and some negatively. And I just think it's fascinating that money has a direct impact on how we act in society. And Crime and Punishment is a really good examination of that. So now when I look at Crime and Punishment, I'm seeing more than just a really fun murder mystery novel. I'm seeing, because of my notes, that there is a deeper question we're examining today, which is, how does poverty, how does money, how does circumstance change who we are and how we behave? And that's how I take notes. Okay, so now my goal is to go through the rest of this book, and I have a lot to sort of dig into here, and I'm going to spend probably the next few hours really thinking about each passage, and I need to read each of these flags in detail. Think about them, think if there's a deeper meaning, and if so, I'm going to transfer it to my notebook. Now, I will do that in my own personal time, not on a YouTube video, because you don't have time to watch all of that. So let's skip to the next part of the notebook. All right, within each notebook, there are 12 guided questions that I've given you to sort of think through the most important aspects of the book. Now, if you don't have the notebooks that I create at edgewaterbookstore.com, that's perfectly fine. You can do this in any notebook you have. Again, I just like having a separate notebook for each book that I read, so that this can go on the shelf and I can pull this off and know that all my thoughts on Crime and Punishment are here, and they're not mingled with grocery lists and school notes and everything else. But wherever you keep your notes, I would suggest you come up with at least 5 questions that are bigger, sort of thematic questions that make you think about the work itself, not just the notes, but the whole arc of the project. So I'm going to actually read to you the 12 guided questions I have on Crime and Punishment, just to get your brain going, so that if you decide to create your own notebooks, you kind of know what I'm talking about here. So the first question is, how does Raskolnikov's theory of the extraordinary man lead to his actions? He's got this really crazy theory in the book that there are 2 kinds of people. There are the ordinary people, which is most of society, and then there are the few that are extraordinary, that can do whatever they want. They can commit crimes, they can get away with it because they are extraordinary, and we need these people in order to move society forward. So the first question is, how does Raskolnikov's theory of the extraordinary man lead his actions? Question number 2, how is poverty, we just talked about that, a character in this novel? I think it's actually a character. It's such a strong presence. Everybody is suffering from this antagonistic sort of dark cloud in St. Petersburg, Russia. How is it acting as a character? And what role does it play? The third question I have here is, how does Dostoevsky explore the idea of morality and its origins? This is a fascinating question because some people believe that morality comes from an external god or creator of some kind, that he, she, or it has defined what it means to be good, what it means to be bad, and so on. Some people don't have a belief in God. Wherever you sit on the field, that's completely up to you, of course. But if you don't believe there's a God, where does morality come from? And some philosophers, like Nietzsche, believed that ethics and morality are actually created through the power struggles of different cultures. So I'm not going to get into it because this video is not about that, but that's what Dostoevsky's playing with here. Did man create ethics and morality? Did man define what is right and what is wrong by establishing laws of the land? That's more what Raskolnikov, the main character in Crime and Punishment, believes. And so I'm asking you to think through that. Where do you think, what's your personal belief system on where morality comes from? The fourth question, how does Sonia, she's a great character in the book, she represents kind of a version of the Mother Mary. How does Sonia act as a counterbalance to Raskolnikov, right? She's the spiritual element. She's the element that keeps him, or tries to keep him, connected to a god. Raskolnikov, throughout the book, is very atheist. He does not believe in a god at all. He's very intellectual. Question 5, how do Raskolnikov's sister and mother influence his personality? He's got a family element in this book that really push and pull him in different directions. And I want to think about that as a reader. And if you buy the notebooks that I create, I would love for you to think about that too, because I think the role is important. Question 6, what does the novel suggest about the possibilities of redemption? Whether you believe in a God or not, can human beings receive redemption when they do something improper or unethical or unlawful? Question 7, how does Dostoevsky contrast rationalism and spiritualism in the novel? And do you agree? So we're really looking at two different sort of ways of thinking, either the spiritual way or the rational way. And there's a fine balance he's walking, and it's worth thinking about. A few more questions here. Number 8 says, what does the word punishment from the title actually mean? I think titles are worth thinking about. The author put a lot of time into getting the right words there. And Crime and Punishment is a very weighty title, and I would love for you to think about the philosophy behind that. But whether you're reading Crime and Punishment, or let's see, what else do I have on my desk right now? What else am I reading? How to Live by Sarah Bakewell, really great book. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, Sophie's World. You can see that all of these books, no matter what they are or where they come from, have a meaningful title, and sometimes we just breeze past that and get to page 1. Think about the title, it's important. Number 9, how do the, I already read that. I shouldn't read that again. Okay, question 10. What is the meaning of Raskolnikov's sickness? He's sick through the entire book. Why? And why does his personality change so often? He's flip-flopping back and forth. He's like this cover. He's either white or he's just black. He's like mentally speaking, right? He's on, he's off. He's all sorts of things. Question 11, does Raskolnikov ever find freedom from his crimes? And question 12, what are the most important questions this book explores? What captured your attention and why? So if you are using my notebooks, I have one of these for every book I sell at Edgewater, or if you are using a journal, a Moleskine, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you are coming up with some questions about the bigger work. Now, I want to go back. A lot of fiction doesn't really need this in-depth level of thinking, right? If I read something by Dan Brown or John Grisham or Stephen King, I'm not doing this. I'm just reading for fun. It's a good time, and I move on. But if I'm reading a book like Crime and Punishment or Uncle Tom's Cabin or something like that, right? Those books have a much deeper meaning to them, and they have a message that I really want to capture. So yes, I'm going to go through this note-taking process. Okay, the last thing I want to point out in the notebook is if you are reading fiction, you can really get lost with the characters, and you need to keep a list of the major characters and how they interrelate to each other. So on the back cover of my notebooks, I always have a place for you to write the character list. And so I'm going to do that now for Crime and Punishment because I don't want to lose track of the characters I care about most. Okay, so now I've got my characters listed. Now, normally I would do that as I am reading the book, and I come across a character that I think, oh, this is a really important person. I did not do that as I was reading Crime and Punishment, but I just finished it, and they're very fresh in my mind, so I was able to go through and write out the main characters for every one of them. Now, I want to point something out. I actually made a mistake here. I wrote Lucian twice. He was written on number 7 and number 9. I crossed him out, and I want to point out that when you're writing in journals, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to cross them out. It's better to have a journal that's messy than have no journal at all. So I know this is hard, but try to get rid of your anxiety with making notes perfect. Just be proud that you're trying to make some notes. So I've given you in these notebooks a list of 10 characters to track. Some books are going to have 40 characters. Some only have 2. But I want to point out that I'm trying to get you to focus on the most important characters and how they interact with each other. Try not to remember everybody because otherwise books just get too complicated. But so what I did here is I wrote their name and then a couple defining notes to help me remember so that in 10 years when I pull this off my shelf and I think, okay, wait, who did what in Crime and Punishment and why did it matter? I can go to the back page, I can look at my character list, and I can see Raskolnikov. He was the protagonist, he's a poor student, and he's the one that commits the crime. I can see Porfiry Petrovich, he's the investigator. I can see Svidrigailov, he's an older man, he loves Dunya, who is Raskolnikov's sister, and also probably killed his wife, Marfa Petrovna. You get the idea, right? Just make some basic notes about characters so that it will spark something in your mind later on. So here's the thing. A lot of people look at me and go, you're nuts. There's no way I'm doing this with my books. I just want to read and be done. And for that, I applaud you. I think you should know yourself and do what works best for you. For me, this is what works. If it's a book that I really want to get something out of, I enjoy the process of note-taking. I'm comfortable with writing in my books and sort of flagging them and sort of taking the extra time to think through the major concepts. It's a lot of work, and I fully appreciate and agree with that. This means that I read fewer books every year. Instead of reading 50 or 100, I often will get through maybe 10 to 15 if I have read them well. That's the title of my podcast, the Read Well Podcast, because for me, this works. It makes me feel connected to my books. I get so frustrated with myself when I know I've read a book, I know I loved it, but I can't remember anything about it. That's really the feeling I'm trying to combat here. And if you feel the same way, then perhaps you can try some of these ideas and let me know in the comments down below what's working for you and what's not. And if you're interested in this art of reading slowly, I've created a video, which I'll post right here, which walks you through some of the benefits of this style of reading. I've really found over the years that taking my time with a book is sort of changing the way I interact with the material in a positive way. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. And as always, remember to read slowly, take notes, and apply the ideas. I'll see you on the next one.